Okay, so in this video we're going to be doing our NA to TT caliper swap and rotor swap. I was going to do the stainless steel braided brake lines, but the ones that I ordered from StopTech, for whatever reason, they're not fitting on the hard line. I don't know if I got some defective lines or if something's just weird with my car. It's a 97 NA Mark IV Supra, but when I checked part numbers for both the NA and the TT, they're all the same. So I'm not sure if, like I said, something I got was just wrong. I ordered the correct part number, but I did buy it on Amazon. So who knows if it was, one of those third-party sellers that just provided an incorrect part number in the correct packaging. Not sure. But I ended up going to the local hardware store and just getting the rubber hoses. Even though I have rubber hoses on there, they're all kind of falling apart and corroded because they're, 25 years old. So I figured I might as well just replace those with new rubber hoses. And at some point I will do the braided hose replacement, but this is not a video on that. So first thing you're going to need is, after you've taken the tire off, you're going to need a 17 millimeter socket, and the bolts that you're going to be unscrewing are, let's see if I can get my hand around here. So this bolt down here, where's that? And then, yeah, this one right here. And there's one above it. Right there. So we're going to take that whole caliper off doing that, and I suggest having something to suspend this old caliper on, just so it's not putting strain that you're going to get rid of that hose. You don't want it to break or spring leak while you're working on it. So I have just an old coat hanger that I'm going to use to wrap around the caliper and then hang it off the control arm or something like that. All right, so here we go. Once the caliper's off, you can take the rotor off. Okay, now once you have the caliper off, it's probably a good idea to take a wire brush and clean off the rust on these screws. Okay, because you don't want that on there when you're trying to thread that into a brand new caliper. So just brush that off. So one thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to cut your dust shield down. The reason is the rotors on the NA are smaller than the rotors for the TT, and I'll show you here what we're talking about. See that? Doesn't fit, right? So you got to trim most of this dust shield away, actually. I already did the other side, and you end up cutting off a lot more than you'd expect. You also have to trim a little bit down here. I can't remember if I trimmed that side, but you'll see. We'll do this together. So just something to mention, this dust shield's only made of, I think, sheet metal aluminum, and actually the other side I ended up just cutting with some regular sheet metal shears and then filing it down using my Dremel. Cutting it was easy, but it took a little bit longer than I wanted it to, so I'm going to try using my angle grinder with a cutting wheel on it, and we'll see how fast that goes. When you're doing this, you should wear protective eyewear just in case, because there's gonna be little metal shards flying everywhere, probably sparks flying. And I guess ear protection if your ears are sensitive. So here we go. I'll try not to crowd the way of the camera when I do this. Should probably also wear long sleeves. I could definitely feel little flakes of metal hit me in the arms. I don't think this is enough, actually. I probably have to trim it more. This is kind of chewed up looking still. But you know what, I'll go ahead and I'll give it a real quick test fit, being careful not to press the back of the rotor up against any of these shards. Yeah, this whole side is still touching. So I'm going to trim pretty much all that off. Let's do a real quick test fit again and see where it's making contact. Check the clearance. Anything that you think might be a little too close, I think this is going to be a little too close. Trim it. Now I'm just going to quickly take my Dremel and go to the sharp sides of it and file that down. Okay, so I got the edges filed away, but now the next thing that you're gonna have to trim is where the new caliper attaches. The dust shield kind of gets in the way of how the caliper gets mounted, so I'll show you one kind of easy way to do that. Take your caliper, align the two holes from the front, and you can see where they're kind of hitting at the top. And then at the bottom, just put your finger kind of down there where the bottom is, and then just trim away below that. So probably kind of like right here. Give it a test fit. And that looks good. Okay, there. Looks like your caliper's on. I'll show you how good of clearance you have now. We cut that out just right. Tilt the camera a little bit so you can see down here. And that's clearing it just right. Okay, so since we've got a good test fit now with the caliper and the dust shield, we're going to install the rotor, and we're going to hold it on with one lug nut. And if your lug nuts aren't long enough, so just hold the rotor on, find some kind of a spacer. I've got one of these that I used for pulling out the wheel studs, so or pulling through the wheel studs when you install new ones, I should say. So let me show you what I'm going to do here. Make sure it's seated properly on the hub. Now your rotor's not going anywhere. You can spin it and you can see there's no rubbing. Everything worked out so far. Now let's go ahead and install the caliper, the new caliper, starting with the top bolt. It also might have been a little bit easier to do had I rotated the wheel outward so that you could get to the back a little bit easier. So just be aware of that. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to remove the rubber brake line. So now the next thing we're going to do actually is we're going to attach the new hose to the new caliper before we disconnect any of the old stuff. And the reason we're going to do that is so that it's quick and seamless when you do make the connection. You don't lose too much brake fluid. We're going to have to bleed the brakes anyways. I'll show you how I do that. So on the new caliper, go ahead and pop this little rubber plug out. You don't need that anymore. The new caliper, or the new hose that you got, this banjo bolt connection comes with 2 copper washers. Let me see, let me put my light down here to kind of show you what I'm talking about here. This banjo bolt, it's got the hole through it. It comes with 2 copper washers. You're gonna have one on either side of the actual banjo fitting. So you got one right there, and then we're going to put another one on the other side of it. And you can see how that looks. And now this little black tip actually goes right here inside this hole. So there is a certain way that this thing fits on. So when you screw it in, it holds it in place. So just go ahead and screw that in. Can't remember if this is 14 mil, 10 mil, 12 mil. Looks like it's 12 mil. So you don't want to over tighten this, just enough to crush those washers. The other thing I would suggest doing before you disconnect your new, or the old hose, let me flip this around actually. So the other thing I would do is I would disconnect or unscrew this bolt right here, and then pull this one off and screw this new one in, feeding the new hose in the same route that the old one is. That way, like I said, when you disconnect this up here, there is very little brake fluid loss. You can just quickly pop this new one in. But first, clean this area up. It's probably going to be as grimy as mine, or if not worse. can also take your wire brush and kind of clean it up a little bit. Look at all that stuff falling off. Okay, so this bolt down here is also a 12 mil bolt. Okay, so what we want to do here is take a 10 millimeter flare nut wrench, and we just want to break this loose first. Remember, lefty loosey, righty tighty. Just give it a little bit of pressure. There. So at least now the nut is broken loose. Now we want to get this clip off right here. Take a pair of pliers and squeeze and wiggle. And it starts to come loose. And there you go. Got it. Let's clean this up. And now what we're going to try to do, we're going to attempt to real quickly unscrew this. See how that's turning? That's not good. We might have to use our pliers to hold it in place. So we'll unscrew it, quickly pop this one in, and screw this in to here as fast as we can. Without, of course, make sure there's no dirt in here. Without losing too much brake fluid. Okay. Okay, and that one's loose and free. Oop, there goes the caliper. So now, before all that drips out, let's see if we can't plug it back in to the new one and start cranking it down. And we're going to insert this piece again. We have to pull, make sure that that this is pulled all the way through so that this clip can fit back in. And if you're lucky, you can just push it right back in like I did. Now let's make sure that that is tightened down. Because we don't want any leaking. I think that's pretty good. Okay, and we're done with that. Now we just got to put in the brake pads and then bleed the system. So I got these brake pads from R1 Concepts. I got these, the Shim kit and the fitting kit straight from Toyota. It's kind of nice on these shims. It actually has an arrow for the direction of rotation of the tire, so you know how that actually is supposed to go on there. So what you would do is just kind of look at the pad, make sure that the curve goes with the curve of the rotor, place the shims on top of the pads. The fitting kit comes with these little slide tabs, and I guess these are just here to lock it down. They go at the bottom corners of each pad. You just kind of slide it over top and then it holds it in place. just like that. We got to put some anti-squeal grease on these shims, and the shims don't come with it, but yeah, actually they do. The shims came with it. I was going to say the pads came with it, but no, the shim kit comes with this anti-squeal grease. So let's just go ahead and squeeze some of this on here. I have seen on the forum some people say to put a little bit of this grease on the pins. So I'll probably go ahead and do that. Oop. Went a little bit too far. And that's it. Well, that's mostly it. Let me put this little clip back on. And last but not least, that holds them in place, and we're done. Nothing to it. Now we just got to bleed the brakes and start getting some pressure in here so that these pistons will squeeze the brake pads onto the caliper. All right, let's do that now.